I'm Caitlin from the Tax Force, and I'm here today to show a little quick demonstration on how to use QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online is a really powerful tool that's available at a reasonable cost, but it can be very overwhelming to use. QuickBooks does try to make it user-friendly, but let's be honest, if you're not an accountant trying to use a bookkeeping software that even boasts to be user-friendly, I think oftentimes I find clients get a little bit lost. So that's why I'm putting together this little video for you, just to show you some of the basics of QuickBooks Online and what it can do for you. So the three things we'll be covering today is your bank feed, how to enter an invoice, and how to enter a bill and an expense, and how those tie in together to your bank feed. Welcome to our QuickBooks intro session. So this is just a quick little intro to QuickBooks for those of you who haven't used it before, or maybe you've looked at the website but you got a little bit lost. This is a little demo that I do with our new clients. So here's a free preview for you. Okay, so I'm on my dashboard here. So this is actually a recently revamped dashboard, and it shows you a few more things which I actually really like. So when you log in, you're gonna see overdue invoices from your customers. You're gonna see the number of transactions that have not been categorized, and you're gonna see bills that are overdue. And we'll dive into each of those individually. So the first thing that I always like to talk about is the bank feed. The bank feed is basically QuickBooks just downloading your bank transactions. And this is kind of what it looks like. So for you, you'll see transactions and then bank transactions. You might see bookkeeping and then bank transactions. It's a little bit different based on the user. So now we're currently logged on to QuickBooks. We're in our bank transactions feed here. And so what you're going to see here is everything that QuickBooks has pulled from your bank account or your credit card account. So there are two figures here. You can see the bank balance and the QuickBooks balance. We're in our checking account. And Visa, we can see that the bank's showing a negative amount, so it's actually overpaid, and QuickBooks is showing a balance there. We can see the little number here, 8 and 12. This means the number of transactions that have not actually been posted into QuickBooks yet. So we're in the checking here. And what we can see here is some money's been deposited, some money's been spent. What QuickBooks does pull, it pulls the date, it pulls the description, and then it actually tries to categorize it for you. Fun fact, when QuickBooks starts with you, it's brand new, it doesn't know you at all, right? So it's just going to guess on what your categories are. So this is something that you really need to pay attention to, especially when you get started with QuickBooks, just because it's not going to know your business like you do, right? So really look at this and really pay attention to this, especially when you first get started. What we can see here is there was an ATM deposit on July the 28th for $8,760. So there's currently nothing matching to it. We don't really know what this is. So we have two options here. We can either manually enter it through the bank feed, which it will do the posting in the background, meaning if it's a sale, it's going to increase your sales and it's going to increase your bank account. If it's a client paying, it will increase your bank and decrease your accounts receivable. Accounts receivable is an accounting term for the amount of money that's owed to you by clients. So currently we don't know what this is, so we have a few options here. So the first one is, I could say, I know exactly what this is. This was a client paying me, so what I will do is I will click on the transaction to expand it. I will enter a supplier customer here if there is one. There's usually one. Sometimes there's point of sale. I would think that if they're paying $8,700, it's probably more than just a point of sale purchase, which would be, going out for food. So I would recommend putting a supplier customer in here solely based on the fact that it's nice to be able to go back and see who's paid you what, but the most important thing is if you get reviewed for your income tax or HST. The CRA likes to see a ledger, and they like to see a ledger showing the customer name, the amount of the invoice, and the amount of HST that you have collected. And so if you don't put your supplier in here or your customer name, you have to go back and add this in manually after the fact, which is more work for you. So just take the time now to put the supplier customer in. So I'm gonna say this was test. You can see actually a bunch of people have shown up already. That's because those are customers that have already been added after the fact. This is a new one. It's really easy to add new ones right from here. I just type test in, I hit this add new button, and that will bring up a dialog screen where I can enter their information. I can enter their email, their website, their address, whatever I want. I'm just gonna leave the name as test because that's all that I need for these purposes. So you can see it says test. It's currently put this to uncategorized income because the computer doesn't actually know what this is. So I will click the drop down and I will look for my income. There it's services, and then I can choose my tax rate, which it's got all these different tax rates preset. You can change the tax rates, get rid of some, add some, whatever province you're in, or if you're selling to another province, it's pretty easy to add that. So I'll say this was HST on purchases. What you're seeing right here is it's a little dialog box, and what's happened is the computer's trying to be smart, right? So it's saying set tax code for this category. So because we're new to the program and we're starting to use it, the computer is noticing some trends, right? And this trend is I've selected services and now I've selected the HST code. So what it's asking me is, do I want to select this code as the default code for any time I use that services category? I'm going to say yes to this because that will be helpful for me when I'm going to enter expenses or income in the future. And so when I select this tax code, it actually automatically will calculate the HST that I would have collected on the sale. So this would be the gross sale, including HST. What the computer will be recording in the background is actually the net amount of this to sales, the HST collected to the HST payable ledger, and then the difference will go into my bank account. So I'm happy with this transaction. I've got my customer, I got my service, I got my HST. I can add a memo if I want and say something like, sold a computer system. Whatever you want to put here. Memos are great because when you go back to a transaction that you've posted even yesterday, you might not remember what it is. So I always err on the side of more information is better because more information will help me tomorrow, right? There's a reason we all make little sticky notes on our desk and reminders everywhere, and it's because we just can't remember everything, right? So use these memos here to help you remember what a transaction was when you go back to look at it again. So I've put my memo in, and now I'm going to hit add, and the transaction will disappear from my bank transactions ledger. Woohoo! That's one down. Okay, so we've talked about deposits. Let's get into money spent. So on July 21st, I spent $3,458 at Air Express. So it has pulled the vendor here, which is actually really helpful. I mean, often I'll see Tim Hortons, Wendy's, McDonald's, those kinds of things, and I'm pretty easily able to say that's a meal expense. Of course, you really should have the receipt for it, so this is not a replacement for not keeping your receipts. This is really a way to make sure that all your expenses and your incomes are captured properly, right? So ideally, you would have your Air Express invoice sitting right in front of you so you can easily go in here and say, okay, I know exactly what this is. I'm going to expand it. What it has not done is pulled the Air Express vendor here. So I will enter that because we want to make sure our ledgers are nice and detailed. So I hit save. Uncategorized expense. This is the generic expense that it picks when it doesn't know what anything is. So we know that this is travel. And If I wanted to assign this to a customer, I could. I'm not going to. I'll choose my tax rate, which is HST. And now we see again here, set tax code for this category. I'm going to say yes because I travel in Ontario. And then memo, I will say flew to Toronto for test client. And now I've hit add. So what this has now done is it has increased my expense, it's increased my HST paid on purchases, and it's decreased my bank account. Okay, so that's how we manually add things from the bank feed. Let's say I added that deposit and I realized I made a mistake. That's okay. Everybody makes mistakes, right? So what we're going to do is hop over to this categorized button here, and we will see everything that we've already entered into QuickBooks using the bank feed. So I can see here, this is the deposit I was looking for. What I will do is just hit this undo button, and the transaction's totally gone, and it's ready for me to re-enter. So then I can just go through and re-enter it the way we've already discussed. Okay, so this is how to enter things from the bank feed. The bank feed is not the ideal way that we're going to be entering our invoices and our expenses. The proper way really is to manually enter any invoices, point of sales, any invoices from suppliers, and any expenses. So now we're going to dive into how to manually enter your invoices, okay? So let's say that I'm already operating, an event planning business here. So the amount is $87.60, including HST. So I'm just going to jot that number down so I can remember it. Okay, so I'm ready to invoice this client. I've done the work for them. Their event was great. It was a super success, and now I want to get paid for it. So I'm going to click the new button here and click on invoice under customers. So the two differences between an invoice and a sales receipt are an invoice is something that I give to you to pay me later, right? This means when I record the invoice in QuickBooks, it's going to increase my sales and increase my accounts receivable. A sales receipt is I've just handed you the bill, you paid me immediately. And this is what happens at a restaurant, if you go to buy supplies from Staples, that kind of stuff. That's a sales receipt, it's point of purchase. Okay, so we're looking at an invoice here. I'm going to say customer test is the one that had that great party. I want to make sure that my invoice date's correct. That's set as of today. The due date, you see how it says terms net 30 here? That means that this invoice is due in 30 days. We can change this. If it's due on receipt, change it to due on receipt. Net 15 is due in 15 days, and net 60 is due in 60 days. QuickBooks defaults to net 30, but you can change this in the settings to say due on receipt. So product service, these are things that you can set up before you get into your invoicing, but you can also set it up while you're doing your invoicing, okay? So I drill down and I can see that a whole bunch of these products and services have already been set up for me. I don't like them. I want to set up a new one. Let's say Tess got married and I'm going to set up a wedding category. This will bring up this product service entering screen. And so we're not getting too detailed here. We're not saying you've got inventory, all that stuff. Let's just say you're selling a service here. Let's keep it simple. I will choose a non-inventory or a service. I think they both kind of post to the same spot. So I've selected service. I type in the name, which is wedding, category. If I want to kind of put it in some sort of category, I can do that. You sell this product service to your customers. This is tying to the income account. So you can have different income accounts, and the income accounts are helpful because you can choose to have 1, you can choose to have 5, you can choose to have 10. And the only real reason that you would have more than 1 is if you want to track how much income you're making for a specific service. So if I'm offering a wedding service and I offer a birthday service and I offered a funeral service, let's say I wanted to see how much money I was making in each particular service, that's why I would have 3 different service accounts. Sometimes it doesn't matter to you and you just want to see how much money I'm making overall, that's fine. But you do have the option with QuickBooks to set up multiple income accounts so that you can track specifically for each service how much you're making. So for this one, I'm just going to say it's a service. If I wanted to add a new one, I could do that right here. But I'm happy with service. If it's a sales, if it's got a fixed sales price, right? So if I charge my wedding services out at $500 an hour, I would type $500. It's not inclusive of sales tax. I will select the drill down and say it's HST applicable because my services are HST applicable. And then I will hit save and close. So what I can see here is now the wedding has been added. I can put in a description, test wedding, and let's say that was on September 15th. We could say how many hours. Let's say the wedding was 10 hours. So I would put in my quantity of 10, and it's got my rate already pre-selected here at 500. This can, of course, be changed if I decide the test gets a special rate, or there was some extras to this wedding that maybe it should be more. Automatically put the default tax code of HSTON, and then I can see here it's got my subtotal, it's got the HST calculated, and the total is $5,650. That's what's going to be sent to test. I've got my invoice message set up here, so that's great. And then a handy little thing to note, this is exclusive of tax, meaning the amount that I've put right here is not including HST or sales tax, so that's going to get added on top of that. If I change this to inclusive of tax, you can see here now it's the total amount of the invoice, including HST. The number has not changed, it's just presented differently. If I want to look at the invoice, I'll hit this print preview button, and this will allow me to see what the customer will see, and it's actually saved the invoice as I've selected the print button. So this is what the invoice looks like. We can, of course, go in and edit the templates of our invoice, so we can change the colors, we can change the font, we can change the size, we can change where our logo goes. There's a whole bunch of options here. Okay, so I'm done here. I'm going to hit save and close. I could hit save and send. If I had test's email right here, it would send the invoice automatically to test, and then test will just get the invoice. They can pay me however I want to get paid. QuickBooks accepts payments. It's something that you can set up in your settings, but you can also choose to use an external credit collecting software. You can collect e-transfers, cash, whatever you want, but that is a feature that QuickBooks does offer, and the rates are very comparable to what another credit card company might charge. So I will hit save and close, and now my invoice is posted. So what's happened now is my income's gone up, and my accounts receivables gone up, and my HST collected has gone up. Okay, so now I'm looking at my bank feed and I see, oh, Test actually paid me $87.60, so that invoice that I sent Test was wrong. So now I want to find the invoice. So what I can do here is click the new button, find that invoice by clicking invoice. And then we are going to see a little clock button up here. We're going to click on that and it will show the most recently posted invoices. I will click on this invoice. So of course the $87.60 that Test paid me is inclusive of tax. So what I will do is change this to inclusive of tax, change my amount to $87.60, and now I will hit save and close. That is how easy it is to edit an invoice in QuickBooks Online. What we're seeing now on our bank feed page, so our invoice is saved. our updated invoice is saved, and now we're back at our bank feed. So we've now posted our invoice. We made the corrections that shows the correct amount that we should have billed from the customer, and we're now back on our bank feed page. And what we're seeing here is it's saying one match found, and that is because this invoice matches exactly the amount that we billed to test. So when you start seeing this one match, it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, right? Because potentially this is the invoice payment from test, but it could also be an invoice payment from somebody else. So we have two options here. We can either post this directly through the bank feed once again, which means it's showing the money is going into my bank account and decreasing my accounts receivable, or the proper way to record this is to actually manually go into QuickBooks and show us as having received the payment. This is something that I feel is really unique to the business itself. Some businesses operate by invoicing larger amounts that are not always so common in amount. And so you can get away with matching your payments from your customers on the bank feed here. If you're a business that invoices regular amounts that are very common in amount, so a lot of clients pay you $50 plus HST, you're going to run into a problem here because the computer is going to be matching those payments to a ton of clients. So that would be the better way to record it as saying receive payment. So if I hit this match button right here, QuickBooks would post my AR down and post the amount as going into my bank account, and I'm done with this transaction. We're all good. If I wanted to actually manually record the payment myself, I would hit this new button, receive payment. I would then look for the client, Test paid me on July 28th. And it's actually already pulled the invoice up here. So the computer is trying to help me. It's recognizing that Test has an outstanding invoice. Is this the one that Test is going to pay? Yes. So I will hit the checkbox here, and it should pre-fill the amount received and the payment amount. In the event that your computer is being slow, you can type the amount right here, and then it pre-fills it all for you down here. And you want to make sure that the account that it's being deposited into is the correct account. Is it going into the checking account? Yes. Okay, save and close. So now going back to the bank feed, we're still going to see that match, but now it will say match to payment. So one match found, payment. So by matching this, it's not actually going to be recording anything to my computer other than acknowledging that this payment has already been recorded. That's really what's happened here. Entering a sales receipt from a client is done the same way. You hit new, sales receipt. The only difference again is that it's not going into your accounts receivable. So you wouldn't have a payment to match it to. You wouldn't have to record a receive payment because the sales receipt is collecting the income and the payment at the same time. Okay, let's jump on over to expenses. Okay, so I'm going to remember this $371.60 that I spent at a hotel. Okay, so we've talked about the two different types of expenses now, right? The one is going to be an invoice from a supplier that I'm going to be paying at a later time. The other one is a point of sale. So I'm at a restaurant, whatever. Okay, so we've received our bill. It's sitting right in front of us. We're ready to enter it. My supplier's name is, let's just say it was Air Express. I can enter their address, the terms, the bill date. If I want to, I'm going to change this to July 20th. The category here, so this was travel for me, but let's say I've got a new category that I haven't entered into QuickBooks before. I can add a new one right from here by clicking the Add New button. And then it will bring up a dialog box here where I can add a new account. So the first thing is account type. There's a whole bunch. This is an expense. Let's just call it's a travel expense, but I'm getting really granular here in the type of travel. So I'm going to call it hotels. Let's say I travel a whole bunch and I want to see exactly how much I'm spending on hotels, on flights, on food. That's what's happening here. And then I'll choose my default tax code, which is HST because I'm in Ontario. So I've hit save and close. I can enter a description if I want. So let's say hotel for test wedding. The amount was, and so again here we're going to remember this exclusive inclusive of tax thing, which is because the amount that I'm entering is inclusive of tax, I will toggle this to inclusive. And so now whatever I put in here is going to be including tax. And I will select my HST code. Now if I wanted to bill this to a customer, I could. We're not going to get into that. That's a little bit more advanced than this. And so then I will hit save and close. So what we will see now is once we're on our bank feed page, there's going to be another match, and it's going to be an expense matching an open bill. So now we've got another green match button right here. So this is acknowledging that this amount matches exactly this bill for this time frame. So I can either go ahead and hit the match button here. I could say, oh, this wasn't actually this bill, but it was something else I've entered. I can expand this, and I can actually try to find other matches. So it does, like QuickBooks does try to make it easy for you to match everything. It's really trying to glaringly say it's this bill, but it might not be this bill. So I'll exit here. I can see all my other bills that I've posted here. So let's say, oh, it's actually this one to Jennifer Hargreaves, that amount that's come out. I can select that. It's $226, but the computer says, oh, you paid $371. Maybe the difference was a little bit to Christina Gibson, so it will post the difference here and reduce the amount that's owing to her. Of course, that bill here that I just entered for Air Express is sitting there. So just because it's saying match, again, doesn't mean that that's exactly what it is. For me, I know that's the right one, so I'll hit match here. I'll select that one, hit save, and now it's going to post it directly into the computer. So what it is doing now is decreasing my bank account and decreasing my accounts payable. Accounts payable is an accounting term for money that you owe your suppliers. Okay, so expenses, pretty much the same thing as a sales receipt, just the opposite, right? So an expense is point of purchase. A lot of these things, this would be a point of purchase, right? So I'd be exiting the parking lot, scan my credit card, and it would take payment from me. That would show up right away here. So I could enter that as an expense. I could enter it directly through here. Again, it is better to enter it the proper way, but you can get away with entering it here. The bank feed really is just a way to make sure that you're not missing transactions and a way to help you enter your transactions a little bit better. Okay, so what we've gone over today is your bank feed. We've gone over how to enter invoices and sales receipts, and we've gone over how to enter bills and expenses. So those are just a few of the many things that you can do in QuickBooks. How you use QuickBooks really varies based on your unique needs and your understanding of the program. It's something we can talk about with you on what would be the best way for you to manage your bookkeeping. At the office here, we have some clients who enter everything through the bank feed, and that's just fine. We have other clients who do full cycle accounting, which means they're entering everything properly and then using the bank feed as a tool just to make sure those small things didn't get missed. but again, it's really unique to you. If you would like some more support on how to use your QuickBooks, feel free to reach out here to us at the Tax Force. We're very happy to help. QuickBooks has a ton of different features, which really to delve into all of them would take us all day. I just wanted to give you a quick little demonstration on the most common tools that you would be using in your QuickBooks Online program. We're here at the Tax Force. We are ready to assist you, so please feel free to reach out if you have any questions.